All right, well, in the interest of time, I think that we will get started here. Everyone, as they can come in, if you have any questions. I see one question in the chat about seeing anybody as a participant. So we are in a webinar mode, so we are actually not able to see any of the attendees, and all of the attendees are only able to see us. So if you have any issues seeing the 5 of us up here, please do let us know in the chat, and we'll try to take care of the technical bits as we're able to. But we'll get started here. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on community solar today. My name is Nadia Hall, and I am the community environmentalist at Teatown Lake Reservation, where I manage the Environmental Leaders Learning Alliance, also known as ELLA, in partnership with the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County. I'm joined not only by FCWC and Ann today, but also by Tom Ruth of the Sawmill River Audubon, and by Nina Orville and Carmen Santos from Sustainable Westchester. So before we get started, just a few kind of housekeeping notes here. Please use the Q&A function for questions. We'll also try to go through the chat, but it's much easier for us to organize through the Q&A. We will get to as many questions as we're able to at the end. If we're not able to get to some of your questions, please make sure to email me at nhall or nhall@teatown.org. We'll also save any ones that we see here, and we'll try to get to you afterwards. This is just a piece of the conversation, so we're not going to be able to cover everything to do with community solar today, let alone everything to do with solar, but we are interested in continuing this conversation. So please let us know what you are interested in hearing more about, and we'll plan that for future programs. We'll share some resources as we're able to in the chat of things that you might be interested in to do with community solar and solar in general. And again, this is being recorded for future use. So right before we get started, I do want to mention a few events coming up that you all might be interested in as well. One being the Westchester Municipal Sustainability Conference on Thursday, April 1st. This event is co-sponsored by Westchester County, Sustainable Westchester, Federated Conservationists of Westchester County, and ELLA. And then following, there will be a Climate Smart Communities Workshop for municipalities on Wednesday, April 7th at noon. This is sponsored by the League of Women Voters Westchester, Sustainable Westchester, FCWC, ELLA, and Westchester County. All right, I think that's all of the notes that I have. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Anne, to get us started here. Thank you.
Delighted. Thank you so much, Nadia. And I'm so delighted to be here with Nadia, Tom, Nina, and Carmen. And it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you as participants. We're glad you're here today, and to introduce it's a privilege always to introduce Nina Orville, the Executive Director of Sustainable Westchester. But it is Nina also that we have to thank for having gotten Westchester really launched on a very impressive solarization of our county through the solarized programs, the municipal solarized programs, and then community solar. So we're going to be learning a lot about that from Nina today, and her colleague Carmen Santos, who's the program manager of solar programs. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Nina to get us going. Thank you, Nina, and thank you, Carmen.
Okay, thank you so much, Anne and Nadia and Tom. I'm so happy to be joining you today to talk about solar development in Westchester County. And this follows the wonderful event that you had done previously on solar siting, which was so informative. And I'm really pleased to be part of this series that you've put together to bring important information and resources to communities and people in support of appropriate solar development. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm here with my colleague Carmen Santos, as you heard, who will be assisting in part of the presentation, but I'm gonna kick it off. So as Anne mentioned, I'm the Executive Director at Sustainable Westchester. That is effective just as of last week. So prior to that, I had developed and I was running the solar programs for the organization. So that's the work that I have come out of. And almost everybody on the call I know is familiar with Sustainable Westchester, but just very briefly for anyone who might not be, we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We are a membership-based organization, and 45 municipalities in Westchester County are dues-paying members to the organization. So we serve close to 1 million people, the residents of Westchester County. And we develop programs that are designed to benefit our municipal members and their communities at large. So very briefly, these programs include community energy programs, including Westchester Power, a program designed to bring renewable electricity to communities on a community-wide scale. And Carmen will be talking a little more about that. Our community solar program that we'll be sharing more information about today. And then programs that are designed to support the electrification of our energy systems, that are designed to help us move away from fossil fuel for heating our buildings and for transportation. So we have an Energy Smart Homes program that brings energy efficiency and clean heating and cooling technologies to residential property owners. We also have a commercial clean heating and cooling program as well, and a clean transportation program that brings rebates and incentives related to electric vehicles, and also deeply discounted electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We're working with a lot of municipalities throughout the county on this. It's possible for municipalities, multifamily buildings, and commercial facilities to get charging infrastructure either free or at almost no cost now. So this is something that's really important. We also have a couple of programs that we've just recently launched that relate to grid efficiency, making our existing electric grid more efficient. One of those programs is available only to customers in the Con Ed service territory. That's called Grid Rewards. It's a great program. It's part of something that's called Demand Response, which enables participants to earn money for using less electricity just a few times a year during the times that our electric grid is most stressed. So typically that would be an August afternoon. And that's the time when utilities are firing up the very dirtiest of all of their power plants. And so by reducing your usage at those key times, not only are you obviously using less energy, but you're allowing those very dirty plants to remain in standby mode, and ultimately, hopefully, to be taken out of operation. We have another program which is very interesting, which is in a pilot phase, called the Virtual Power Plant, which enables homeowners to be able to get battery storage combined with a solar installation at a lower cost. We're putting together an aggregation of about 200 homeowners in Westchester County that will participate in this program. And by participating in this aggregation, there'll be additional revenue streams available that help reduce the cost of getting battery storage and solar. So that's something that there's a lot of interest in, and we're looking forward to us developing a very successful program in that regard. We also have zero waste efforts. So we have 14 municipalities using an app that Sustainable Westchester provides called Recycle Right, that helps residents of those communities keep materials that could be recycled out of the waste stream. and reduces stress on municipal staff that have to field questions about recycling calendars, trash calendars, changes to schedules and service. And so we're going to be focusing today, of course, on community solar in general. But if anybody who is participating in this webinar is interested in learning more about any of these programs, we have staff at Sustainable Westchester that Carmen and I can connect you with to get all of your questions answered. So all of those programs that I referenced at Sustainable Westchester are aligned with New York State's nation-leading climate law, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. We're so lucky to be in a state that takes climate change as seriously as New York does, that recognizes that it's a crisis that we have to be in the midst of engaging with immediately and on an urgent basis. And New York State has set some extraordinarily ambitious, they're not even goals at this point, they're requirements through this law. So one of those is that 70% of the electricity on New York State's electric grid is required to come from renewable sources by 2030. So we're currently at about 30%. And the vast majority of that 30% is from hydro, which is a source that you can't just make more of. And so we have this extraordinarily challenging requirement to move essentially from 30% to 70%. And that's got to be through wind, through solar. So we really have our work cut out for us in that respect. In addition, the state requires that we reduce greenhouse gas emissions 40% by 2030. So that means not only making changes to the source of electricity on our grid, which wouldn't get us there, it means also tackling the use of fossil fuels in buildings and transportation. And that greenhouse gas emission reduction requirement goes to 85% by 2050. So it's important that the state has set some relatively near-term targets because that obviously sharpens everybody's attention. In addition, the state is focused not only on carbon emissions and direct climate-related issues, but also issues related to equity in how the state tackles the climate crisis. So there is a requirement that 35% at minimum of the benefits that result from meeting the climate requirements be targeted to disadvantaged communities. And so that's a minimum of 35%, a target of 40%. So as the state and as communities are thinking about how to achieve those extraordinarily aggressive targets we saw on the prior slide, there's also a requirement to make sure that those solutions are bringing benefits to disadvantaged communities. And that's really critical, not only for general, to generally address equity issues, but also specifically because these are communities that have suffered significantly from our existing energy system. So often these communities are sited near polluting power plants. They might be sited near highways where the level of exhaust are really high, near incinerators, et cetera. And the health impacts are, and the disparity in health impacts is very stark when you dig into the numbers. There's also an energy burden disparity that is important to recognize. And the energy burden is defined as the percentage of income that is spent on energy-related expenses. So there was analysis done in New York State looking at the relative energy burden of low-income New Yorkers and New Yorkers that are not low-income. And it was quite shocking in that it showed that low-income New Yorkers spend almost 13%, 12.9% of their income on energy-related costs. And that compares to 2.4% for New Yorkers that are not low income. So energy expenses are really a crushing burden for low-income New Yorkers. There's also really interesting work that a wonderful organization, many of you know, Groundwork Hudson Valley, has done looking at issues related to this, specifically elevated areas of high temperature in low-income neighborhoods in Yonkers. So that, and that has to do with historical impacts related to redlining, disinvestment in those communities. There's a lack of tree coverage, et cetera. So temperatures are much higher in certain low-income areas, which means, again, if you think of high summer heat, you have the health impact associated with that. You have the fact that to stay comfortable, people in those neighborhoods have to run their air conditioners longer and spend more money to stay comfortable. You also have the reality that there are a host of energy-related incentives that New York has put in place that really have not been available to low-income New Yorkers. So we're going to be talking about solar, but if you think, for instance, about traditional residential solar, you have to be a homeowner, first of all, to be able to benefit from that. That wasn't something that was available to renters. And the way tax credits were structured also for solar meant that people who were lower income, even if they were homeowners, might not be able to benefit as fully as people with higher income. So it's really important to stay focused both on the absolutely urgent need to address the climate crisis through hitting the requirements that New York has established, but also really to stay focused on these issues that relate to equity in our communities. So this is where community solar comes in. And community solar is something that we have been extremely bullish about at Sustainable Westchester, because it essentially enables us to advance both the goals of accelerating adoption of renewable energy and expanding access to its benefits and addressing the issues related to equity. So for those of us who were involved in solar development in different ways in the area before community solar, we used to, in our travels around the county, we would see warehouses that were perfect locations for solar development with no solar installations. And it was a source of frustration. Why can't we make solar development happen in these places that are clearly so optimal for solar development? And the reality is that that was challenging, because obviously you need the property owner where the solar will be sited to embrace solar development happening in that location. And before community solar, it was a much more complicated calculus for those property owners. So typically the solar that might be installed in this traditional approach would be used to offset the usage, the electricity usage of that property. Maybe another property owned by the same owner. But essentially you were capped at the size of the installation based on the usage of the property owner. And then it's a very complex thing. These commercial scale solar installations are obviously big investments. So the property owners could decide to purchase them, maybe go out and get financing to do that, but that's a complicated undertaking. Or they could try and negotiate a lease with a solar contractor, or potentially, if the system was large enough, enter into a power purchase agreement where they're agreeing to buy the power at a fixed price over the life of the system. But all of these things are complicated. The property owner has to think about how much electricity will they use, what is likely to happen with electricity rates, complicated financing related analyses that are required. And for property owners, typically, solar development isn't at the core of what they're doing. And so what we heard from a lot of people was it's just too complicated. It's not really worth it for me. So community solar is a new approach to solar development that was enabled by the Public Service Commission in New York State several years ago. And it's designed to accelerate solar development and also, as I mentioned, to address the issues related to equity and access. And briefly, what it does essentially is disaggregate the solar siting from who's using the electricity. So the solar can be sited in a place that's optimal, on top of a roof, or in an empty field, on a landfill, in a parking lot. All of that electricity is then exported to the utility. It helps the electricity supply on that local grid be a little bit more green. The utility continues to supply its customers, but then individuals and other eligible organizations that are within that utility area are able to subscribe or enroll in a particular community solar farm. And what that means is that they get the value of their share of the electricity produced from that system as a credit on their utility bill. And then they pay a discounted amount for that. So they end up saving. So in a little more detail, what that means is that the property owner, say someone who has a number of warehouses, they enter into a lease agreement to lease the roof or lease their parking lots for solar development to a solar developer who comes in, will construct, operate, and own those solar systems for the life of the systems. The property owner, who's known as the host in this case, receives lease revenue for the life of the lease. And they may also choose to enroll as a subscriber in the solar facility that's located on the property, and then get the savings that a subscriber would get. But again, all the electricity is exported to the grid. So what this means for the host is there's no cost to them. They're not maintaining the system. They don't have to think about how much electricity they're using and whether this is going to, whether they're locking into some fixed rate for electricity supply that might not benefit them. Instead, it simply becomes revenue. And that's a big change. For the developers, they're participating in this system constructed by New York State. And so New York State, the Public Service Commission, has established a methodology for valuing the electricity generated from these community solar facilities. And that process is called the value of distributed energy. So I mentioned that the utility in the community solar framework, the utility receives the energy from these community solar farms, and the utility, rather than paying the owner of the solar farms for that electricity at the rate set by New York State, instead is required to place credits on the utility bills of subscribers. So it's essentially a roundabout way for the utility to pay for the energy they receive. They pay by putting these credits on subscribers' utility bills. And that then enables the solar developer to bill the subscribers at a discounted rate for those credits that the subscribers have received on the utility bill that were placed there by the utility. And I should mention this sort of circuitous way of addressing credits and payments, that's going to be streamlined over the course of the year. There's been a long proceeding on that. And by the end of the year, it's going to be a more streamlined process, but that's the way it works now. So one of the things that's just important to note here is that subscribers have to be in the same utility service territory as the solar facility that they're subscribing to. And so that means that community solar creates demand essentially for solar facilities in places like Con Ed, for instance, where there hadn't previously been a lot of development. So let's look at what community solar has done in terms of spurring development. These are numbers that Carmen assembled based on information available from New York State, from NYSERDA. And you can see on the left side of the screen, these are applications that relate to non-residential solar projects in Con Ed. And the blue bars are not community solar. So those are applications for solar facilities that are not structured as community solar. And the orange bars, which are labeled CDG, which stands for Community Distributed Generation, which is a kind of development that community solar can be described as. The orange bars are community solar. So you can see that applications in Con Ed really took off in 2020. In 2019, the community solar applications are a little bit lower than non-community solar. And in 2020, community solar has just revved up and has dramatically outpaced. And you can see the growth in applications overall of about 120 megawatts in total in 2020. And then over on the right, this shows the same thing, but specifically for completed projects. So here you can just see that there's a little lag for these commercial scale projects where the applications are submitted probably the year before they're constructed. So if we were to look at this chart next year and the numbers for 2021 were there, the completed CDG or community solar projects would significantly dwarf the non-CDG projects. So now we're going to look at the same thing in NYSEG. Now, remember that Con Ed is New York City and most of Westchester. NYSEG is a utility service territory that extends largely throughout New York State. So there's a corner of NYSEG that's in northern Westchester, but most of the NYSEG territory extends through regions of New York State that are very rural and very different than Westchester County. So this is for NYSEG overall. And you can see that CDG, or community solar, took off faster in NYSEG than it did in Con Ed. In 2018, there's a little bit of it. 2019, on the chart on the left-hand side, look how the orange bar outstrips that little blue bar. And then things fall off just a little bit in 2020. And again, on the right-hand side, those are the completed projects, just like it was in the prior slide. And you can see there's been a lot more completed projects in NYSEG than there have been in Con Ed. So now we're going to look at how community solar development looks in the two respective utility service territories, because again, Westchester is served most communities in Westchester are served by Con Ed, but we have a number of them up in the northern part of the county that are served by NYSEG. And it was very interesting as Carmen was putting together these numbers to look at what they show, because they really highlight how different things are. So again, these numbers that are on the screen are for all of Con Ed and all of NYSEG, rather than being Westchester specific. But you can see that the size of projects in Con Ed service territory, particularly if you look at the median size, is tiny compared to the size of projects in the NYSEG service territory. And and these are community solar projects. And so that reflects the difference in conditions in Con Ed versus in NYSEG. So in Con Ed, a lot of these community solar projects that are being constructed are on brownstones, for instance, in New York City. They're little rooftop systems. And even in terms of the average sizes as opposed to the median, it's essentially all rooftop. There's a little bit of, I know of a project on a landfill in Mount Kisco, a wonderful project that made excellent use of the municipal capped landfill. We're starting to see projects come into the pipeline that relate to parking canopies, which is very exciting in Con Ed, but it's predominantly rooftop systems. And then if you look at NYSEG, the median project size, 3 megawatts, and the average is almost 4. And so that reflects these very large solar farms that are being constructed upstate New York. And the land values are much lower there. Parcels are much larger. And you can see all of that reflected in these numbers. So then Carmen put together information regarding Westchester County in particular, looking at Con Ed and NYSEG. And here what's interesting, and this actually really surprised me, the project size in Con Ed in Westchester County is significantly larger than in New York City. So now we're not talking about projects being built on brownstones. We're talking about larger projects on top of warehouse roofs, for instance. or big parking canopy projects that are in the pipeline. So in Westchester, the project size is significantly larger than it is in New York City, in Con Ed. And you can see that there are 12 community solar projects that have been completed in Con Ed service territory and another 76 that are in the pipeline. And then this also very much surprised me. If you look at NYSEG and community solar in Westchester County, there's only one project that has been constructed. That's one that is on top of a horse farm in North Salem. So conditions in Westchester County in NYSEG have not been conducive at all to community solar. The land values are very high. The zoning in a lot of cases is more restrictive. The economics are very challenging, frankly, for solar development in NYSEG, if you're dealing with high land values in particular. So it's really interesting to look at these numbers and to see the what they reveal. So overall, community solar has really transformed solar development in Westchester in Con Ed service territory. We're seeing this proliferation of projects, almost all rooftop, some parking canopy. And so whereas I used to lament about these beautiful rooftops that I would pass that didn't have solar, the other day I was driving through Elmsford through an office park, and essentially every building in that office park is scheduled to have solar installed. So there's going to be just a huge increase in solar generation that has been driven by community solar in Con Ed. And in NYSEG, as we saw, that's not happening. Certainly not driven by community solar. The facilities that are being constructed are farther north. They're large in scale. The ones that Sustainable Westchester has been connecting subscribers to in NYSEG communities in Westchester County are ones that I'm very proud to be associated with. They're on land that some of which was used for hay farming, but land that had been cleared a long time ago, where the property owners were under a lot of financial stress, and leasing out a small piece of their land allows them to keep the rest in agriculture and to hold on to the property themselves. It reduces some of the financial stress. So that's a little picture of what we're seeing. Now, the reason that we've been very excited about community solar, about bringing this opportunity to our communities, is that it's an incredibly great deal for people who enroll. And so Sustainable Westchester has been vetting enrollment opportunities and connecting subscribers to community solar enrollment. And what that ends up providing to subscribers is savings of up to 10% on their total electricity bill. There's no cost to join. You're not investing in anything. There are no upfront payments. There's no solar installation. You're directly supporting new solar development. So these community solar projects have to be fully enrolled or subscribed before they go live. That's how the economics of them work best. And so when you enroll, you're essentially you're creating a market for more solar development. And really, most importantly, it's available to almost everybody, including renters. So since it doesn't involve solar being constructed on your roof, anybody who pays a utility bill, including renters, are eligible. And so that gets to the equity piece. And also importantly, community solar doesn't become your electricity supply, so it doesn't replace whoever your electricity supplier is. Instead, it simply results in a new form of credit being placed on your bill. And otherwise, your bill remains as it was. So it's got a lot of benefits, and it works very, very well for subscribers. So Sustainable Westchester has been working in a range of ways related to community solar. And I'll just walk us through, and Carmen will talk about our opt-out program. So we have been bringing community solar enrollment opportunities to communities. Again, helps save people money. It can further a community's sustainability goals. There are goals to make access to the benefits of renewable energy more equitable. It also can advance participation in NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities program. That's something we're happy to talk about later, and that we have enrolled over 1,600 subscribers through the website. We've also been helping municipalities enroll. And this is something that we're able to do for more municipalities as well. And that gives them the same 10% savings. So those are the parties that have enrolled through us to date, and others are pending. It's a simple process where the municipalities provide us their electricity information, which we can help them get. And then we do the analysis for them of what the savings would be. Then we've been working on an interesting opportunity for municipalities to host community solar installations. This is called the Westchester Community Solar Partnership, and it's in partnership with the New York Power Authority and with Westchester County. Peter McCart has been the lead on this for Westchester County, and Sustainable Westchester is participating as well. So we have 25 municipalities that have submitted sites for consideration for potentially hosting community solar installations, 10 school districts. NYPA is intending to issue an RFP to solar developers next week. And the hosts would earn lease revenues for the sites that end up being developed for community solar. And it's the process is that NYPA is following up with those that have submitted sites. And Sustainable Westchester is the party that will do the customer enrollment after the sites are in development. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Carmen Santos to share with you the a development that I think is maybe the most exciting thing that we're doing at Sustainable Westchester right now.
Thank you, Nina. And I just want to start by saying that I'm very excited to be working on this program that we are referring to as an opt-out community solar program at Sustainable Westchester. And this is a new offering that would be available through our Westchester Power program. The Westchester Power program is a community energy supply program, first of its kind in New York State, through which we aggregate residents and small businesses to purchase electricity together. It will be available in the opt-out community solar program will be available in the 28 Westchester Power participating municipalities, which you can see in the map in blue. The program offers, the Westchester Power program currently offers 100% New York State renewable energy default option in 26 municipalities who have chosen that as their default. We also have a standard option that is largely non-renewable, and any resident within any municipality can actually switch between the two options. So anyone who lives in a municipality where the default is standard option, they can opt up to 100% renewable energy at any time. So the program functions as an opt-out structure that is eligible residents and small businesses are automatically enrolled in the program unless they choose to opt out or not participate. So, and at any time, any resident can opt out of the program. So this opt-out program and the simplicity of the process for residents and small businesses allow communities to effect change at scale and rapidly. So you can see that, you know, we're in challenging times where we need to aggressively move towards a sustainable future. And you can imagine the importance of such a structure. So since the program started in 2016, collectively communities participating in the program have mitigated over 830,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to taking off 180,000 cars off the road. So that's a really impressive feat to me. And similar to this Westchester Power program, in the opt-out community solar program, we're going to make use of the strength of this opt-out structure. So this new program will help us promote and accelerate solar development and equity at scale. And we will make use of developments that are happening in the regulation and the community solar sector to streamline the process and deliver benefits to those who need it the most by prioritizing low-income residents within Westchester Power communities. The savings will be made to home energy assistance program and other assistance program participants first. In the NYSEG territory, we will likely expand the benefits to other community members as well. So this program has been recognized as a very important program, and we have thankfully received support from NYSERDA and the Westchester Community Foundation to create it. So NYSERDA itself has a program called the Solar for All program that aims to provide community solar benefits to up to 10,000 low-income participants throughout the state. This has been really difficult for them to achieve, and a program like the one we are creating right now can really reach a lot of low-income households quickly. So we are really excited the idea that we are deploying this program. And like Nina said, this program is consistent with the New York State Climate Leadership and Community Protection goal of directing the benefits of the transition to a clean energy future to at least 35%. 35% of those benefits being directed to disadvantaged communities. So we are very motivated to enable this program, and we are working fast and steadily to make it available this year and help more members of our community who need it, the benefits the most, transition to clean energy and benefit from it.
Great. Great. So just briefly, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, there are various incentives that reduce the cost for solar developers to build these systems. NYSERDA provides incentives. There's accelerated depreciation that can be taken advantage of. There are federal tax credits. There are other incentives in Con Ed. There's an incentive related to parking canopies and roof canopies. There is going to be an incentive coming for projects community solar projects that benefit low-income people. So these are all incentives that reduce a developer's cost to construct these projects. And then there's the question of how solar developers make money from the projects that they invest in. And in Con Ed, well, it's not only in Con Ed, there's something called the VEDR rate, which is the rate that New York State has established for energy produced from these systems. And in Con Ed, that rate currently is close to what the retail electricity rate is. It varies a little bit, but about 24 cents. There's an element of that called the community credit that accounts for about half of that value. And the challenge that we have is that the community credit is largely expended, is largely allocated. And so we have this question about what happens next. In NYSEG, we have the same situation, but actually the community credit is now gone. It was never as large as it was in Con Ed. The community credit was set very high in Con Ed because traditionally there had been so little solar development in that region. It's an area, obviously, that's very grid constrained. There's a lot of value to producing electricity within a grid constrained area. So the value was set high. So in the Con Ed service territory, there's an effort underway now to, we're going to submit a petition to the Public Service Commission asking that they replenish the community credit. And the rationale for that is not only is that it's critically important and now we have momentum and we're starting to see exactly what the state wants to see happen, but also that about half of the total of the original community credit that had been authorized ended up being snatched up by natural gas powered fuel cells, which hadn't been intended. There was a loophole that some fuel cell project developers found. And so this incentive that was supposed to be targeted to solar, a lot of it ended up being absorbed by projects that don't have the environmental benefit that solar does. So we're going to share with the attendees information about this petition that is underway. There's going to likely be a petition effort in NYSEG as well, but what is being asked for has not been fully articulated yet. So we would love to follow up. Our feeling at Sustainable Westchester is we've made this big investment, solar developers, communities, Sustainable Westchester, loads of parties in creating successful mechanisms to deliver on the promise of community solar, particularly in terms of delivering the benefits to low-income people. And it would be unacceptable and just so unfortunate if we weren't actually able to deliver on that promise because we didn't have the availability of community solar due to the lack of these incentives. So we're going to be making a case for why we think it's so important that these incentives be replenished and sharing information with other people so that other folks who want to weigh in on this issue will be able to easily weigh in as well. And when it comes to NYSEG, when the various parties who are looking at what to do in NYSEG have clarity, then we'll share information on that as well. So that's the presentation. And I
Thank you so much,
apologize.
Nina.
I apologize for going longer than expected. I wanted to save plenty of time for questions. I'm happy to stay as long as anyone likes, but.
Well, you're right on time. We'll get to a few, and then anybody who's able to stay, maybe we'll take a few more. And for anybody else, we'll try to get to your questions afterwards and then send out kind of categorically some of our answers. So we'll go into the Q&A here. I noticed that there were a few questions up front specific to people's own rooftops and their own situations. We're not necessarily going to be able to answer those here, but if you do want to email me, and I'll put my email in the chat in a moment, I can try to connect you with someone who is able to answer those more specific questions, unless your question happens to be about being a host for a community solar, in which case, if you can clarify that, and we'll get to that. So my co-host and I will go in here. Right before we get to, I think, maybe our first question, I did notice that Simon Skolnick pointed out that he really likes specific numbers, and he wants some specifics on renewable sources of electric generation, and how exactly where those numbers will come from very specifically. So while of course Nina and Carmen, I invite you to add your thoughts to this, I do want to say, Simon, that this would make a great topic specific to the CLCPA in the future, so that we can answer that in greater depth than we will be able to here today. But I don't know, Nina and Carmen, if you have any thoughts on that right now that you wanted to add.
I'm not sure whether that question has to do with the Westchester Power Program. I think it would be helpful for us to be able to answer in a more expansive way if we have clarity regarding the specific question.
I agree, but point taken, Simon, and I'm making a note that would make for a great future program. All right, so some questions here. Specifically, John Rhodes asks, is there a minimum practical size for community solar?
So the minimum practical size, there are additional expenses associated with setting up a project as a community solar project. And certain other requirements, you have to have a minimum of 10 subscribers. So it doesn't lend itself. You can't do it, say, if you have 2 houses, for instance, that want to share one installation. The minimum size in Con Ed is I think a little smaller than the minimum size in NYSEG because the value of energy is higher in Con Ed. So I think most people who are involved in developing these projects wouldn't go near anything that's less than 100 kW or so, but it depends a lot on the company. Some will push the margin and make it and go smaller, and a lot of other ones focus on much larger projects.
All right, someone else asked, they said that they subscribed, but they haven't received credits yet, and so they're wondering if there's sort of a lag time in when they begin.
That's a great question and an important question. So I mentioned that these projects, for the economics to work, the projects really need to be subscribed really before they're constructed. So there typically is a lag time, particularly at this relatively early stage of community solar. You can see the number of projects that have been completed is small compared to the number that are in the pipeline. And so it is typical to have a lag, but hopefully the benefits will continue for a long time. Up in NYSEG, for instance, the enrollment opportunity that we're offering through Sustainable Westchester is a 20-year enrollment opportunity. You can cancel at any time, but you can stay with the project for 20 years. So there's a lag, but then you get a very long benefit.
And on the topic of time lags, there's also a question. It says growth in CDG applications has not been matched by those projects that have been completed. Is this just a time lag, or does it also reflect project rejections by town planning boards?
That's a great question. So there always is going to be a lag between an application being filed for a project and a project being completed. So a lot of it is lag. It could be that certainly with some of the projects, it could be that there's a problem that happens in the development in the development cycle and it falls out. So it's probably a mix.
All right, I think we'll probably try to take maybe 3 or 4 more questions here. So if my co-hosts could just go through and see if there's anything that really stands out to you that we don't want to miss before we get off today. But again, we will try to answer the rest. There's this very timely question that says, what downsides exist for joining a solar powered grid? Could subscribers face cost hikes or spikes when the utility has to supplement or replace solar power during natural or unanticipated emergencies, just like parts of Texas experienced within their unregulated grids?
That's a great question. So in the case of community solar, speaking as a subscriber, there really is no downside. So the solar energy becomes an element of the electricity supply on the grid. As we move towards those aggressive requirements that New York State has established, there are going to have to be a lot of changes to our electricity supply system. And some of that will have to do with making better use of battery storage. So we're able to essentially take advantage of renewable energy sources during times that are optimal for production. So on sunny days, you fill the batteries with electricity generated from solar systems or from wind systems. And then at night, or when there's no wind, you're able to discharge the batteries and inject clean energy into the grid. So there will have to be a lot of changes that come down the line that are kind of in process and being figured out now. But from a subscriber's perspective, there's absolutely no downside.
Nadia, Ann Summers asks, how do I sign up for community solar? It sounds terrific, and I live in Montrose.
Oh, great. Okay. One of the very first community solar projects that we help people enroll in actually was located in Montrose. So the website is sustainablewestchester.org/solar. And that will take you to the community solar page. You need your utility bill, and then you need to set up the automated payment to make the discounted payments for the solar credits that you receive. And Carmen and others working in that program can help with any questions that arise.
One other question about Lori Ensinger had. Does Sustainable Westchester play a role in guiding community solar siting decisions at the municipal level?
That's an excellent question. And the role that we have played is to bring resources to municipalities so that they have access to guidance and templates and advice. So we have hosted a couple or sponsored a couple of events where we brought in experts from NYSERDA to share their template comprehensive solar laws that address these issues. We have put municipal officials in contact with each other, where a municipality has done a lot of work on this issue and another municipality is trying to figure out how to proceed. We've done that matchmaking. We don't inject ourselves in processes within a municipality, so we're there to provide resources, but certainly not to tell a municipality what they should do. Other than removing certain barriers that almost everybody would agree should be removed, related to solar siting. For instance, historically, there are some municipalities that even with residential rooftop solar have had restrictions against having that solar facility constructed if it can be visible by anybody from the street. That's the kind of thing that we would certainly encourage municipalities to eliminate if they have that old legacy sort of restriction.
I have a great
I
comment
have a
here,
question.
important comment here from,
Oh.
sorry, Carmen, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, and this question comes up a lot, actually, Nina. And someone asked, just to boil it down, if a homeowner signs up for community solar, does this energy source replace Constellation with Westchester Power? So this is a question we frequently get. Nina, do you want to take it or should I take it?
Well, just in the interest of time, I'll say this is the best question because if you are participating in Sustainable Westchester's Westchester Power Program and getting 100% renewable electricity through that program, you can double your positive financial impact by also subscribing to community solar. So you're essentially supporting renewable energy twice through the electricity you're purchasing through the Westchester Power Program, and by creating demand for and supporting this new solar facility that's going to be constructed because you are subscribing to community solar. And then you're also getting the 10% cost savings related to community solar. So it's the perfect thing.
I'd like to maybe end on something that John Rhodes brought up that I think is really important. And he brought up that in a past conversation that you had mentioned that the structure of community solar can make it difficult for low-income families to sign up because of credit checks. So is there anything being done to remove that barrier?
Do you want to talk about that, Carmen?
Yes, thank you. So there is, we are, well, the utilities are about to enable something called consolidated billing or net crediting. And that means that there won't be a two bill system that we're currently using for community solar. And that means there would not be any credit checks for low-income households or anyone for the matter to be able to participate in community solar. This is going to be enabled this year if everything goes to, according to plan in the Con Ed area as well as the NICEC area, hopefully after mid-2021. And we're also going to be making use of this in the opt-out program that we are developing.
And
That's
we've also been advocating to all the solar developers that we work with currently to not require credit checks, and we've been successful in that regard. So all of the community solar enrollment opportunities that we have right now through Sustainable Westchester, none of them have credit checks associated with them.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nina and Carmen, for joining us, and thank you to the co-sponsors of Anne and Tom for being with us today. I know that this is, again, just the beginning of a longer conversation, but we appreciate everyone sticking it out with us here today. I will be sending out the recording in the next few days to everybody, but make sure that if you have any burning questions that we did not get to answer, send them over to my email, which is over in the chat right now. So thank you to everybody, and thank you, Nina and Carmen.
Thank you so much.
Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody.